made a choice. This is my path.
Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, is struggling to juggle his private life with his responsibility as a superhero. As more powerful foes rise to fight him and Peter investigates further into his past, he finds that all of his enemies are being created from the sources found at Oscorp. The good! Actors often have the power to make or break a movie, and in this movie, the actors are fantastic. He's very quick-witted, has a lot of cheesy banter with not only his enemies but his friends and family. He puts great amounts of emotion into his performance, and he uses his Spider-Man powers in a lot of really cool ways. Once again, Emma Stone is fantastic as Gwen Stacy, going beyond the role of damsel in distress. She's very witty as well, having a lot of snappy retorts to anything Peter throws her way, and the relationship chemistry she has with Peter Parker is absolutely awesome. I don't rant and rave and praise romances all that much, but the one in this movie, it's great. Sally Field reprises her role as Aunt May, and my goodness, what a woman she makes Aunt May out to be. She's got both the quick instincts of a stern motherly type figure and the incredibly compassionate characteristics of a motherly type figure. It makes me choke up a little bit in some of those compassionate parts, I'm not gonna lie. Then there's a relative newcomer, Dane DeHaan from Chronicle, playing Harry Osborn. First off, the emotional output of this character is incredible, especially given the motivations you see him have. I also think he gives off a pretty good rich boy vibe, something that Harry Osborn should have, and something that James Franco in the Sam Raimi movies didn't quite have as much of. As it often is with superhero movies, the action is fantastic. Spider-Man is probably my favorite hero as far as action goes. He gets to just swing around everywhere. It's really fun to watch. At first I thought there was a bit too much slow-mo in this movie, but thinking back on it a little bit, they use it in pretty effective ways for the most part. Lastly, this movie has an awesome sense of intrigue. The movie starts off by teasing you, showing you a little more about Peter's parents and what happened to them. There were also teases for things like the Sinister Six and Black Cat, the latter of which I'm really excited for, if they do it right. And hey, I'm not that much of a comic book guy, so there could be other things they're teasing in there that I didn't see. The iffy. There's a track from the score, I believe it's Spider-Man's theme, that sounds like some of the music from Marvel Studios' The Avengers. I don't know, could be just me. Like its predecessor, this movie is very melodramatic. They're pretty good melodramatic scenes too, but at the same time, I feel like there's so much, it almost overshadows the superhero aspect of this movie to the point that you might as well rename it a soap opera called Oh What a Tangled Web. Because the Spider-Man Rogue Gallery has a bunch of unique villains with very unique origin stories, I found it a little weird that Oscorp is constantly being made the source of all evil in this movie. At the same time, with their decision to include multiple villains, I think it's a fairly good idea that they're able to centralize everything in a way. I feel like arguably the most important thing that happens in this movie during the climax, I will not say what it is, it's glanced over a little bit within the context of just this movie. Hopefully what they'll do in the future is make sure that this is a constant motivational aspect in future movies. That is, they won't treat it as just a thing that happened. The bad. I had some qualms with the way Electro was done in this movie. His origin is actually pretty good. In some ways, it makes a little more sense than the comic book version of his origin. His major driving motivation is that he is a man with almost no friends and gets almost no attention for things he really deserves attention for. But when he becomes Electro and starts raving about getting attention or having attention taken from him, it starts to make him sound just really petty. In all fairness though, I do see this character and I do feel really sorry for him. I mean, the crap he has to deal with, that is just really, really unfortunate. Like Spider-Man 3 did in the past, this movie utilizes 3 villains. And some people may prepare to cry blasphemy on this, but I think that Spider-Man 3 did it better. 2 of the villains don't come in until some of the very final minutes of the movie. Though admittedly, one of those that came in at the last minute is a bit more forgivable, as he doesn't play a huge part in the central storyline. Out of the 2 villains that were given movie-long development, one of them was hammered in near the end so suddenly that I jolted a little. And lastly, the trailers for this movie had a fair number of bits that weren't included in the final version. Now, in certain cases, like maybe in certain scenes they wanted to go for alternate takes just for the trailer, but the final version needed something a little different than that. That's a bit iffy, but ultimately, I'm okay with that. Now, on the other hand, there is some stuff that builds intrigue and feels like it's going to be a really important part of the movie, and then it doesn't actually wind up being in the movie. It's one thing to go for alternate takes in the movie. It's a completely different thing to give your audience false expectations that the movie doesn't fulfill. The verdict? This is probably one of the most internally polarizing movies I've ever seen. There are things I really like about it, and there are things I really don't like about it. And all I have to say is, if they're playing Sinister Six in the future, I hope they get themselves together a little better than they've got themselves together right now. This is Detective Steve, and this movie makes my head spin.